Well, I was actually born in Siberia, in actually just a few months before the collapse of USSR. Technically, I was born in the USSR. The country does not exist anymore. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna win the Olympiad. He was like, bro, you're absolutely horrible. You don't understand any physics or mathematics. Boy, you'll win. She saw something in me, but I didn't believe her. I was like, you have no idea what you're doing. So I was like, I'm just gonna like code websites for people here in Auckland just to make some money. Maybe I meet some people. I thought I really want to concentrate on space, and so I spent 5 years reading books and educating myself in various libraries while working in that company towards citizenship. I thought the next frontier is in-space operations. Like, what is the next thing for in space? How is the industry going to progress? And eventually they said, okay, screw it. They got the credible people, they done the sanity checks, done the diligence, and said, screw it, man, let's give it a crack. Let's give it a shot. Here's like $100,000. We're about to deploy the world's first superconducting product, actually commercial product into space this year, 2025.
This is Pavlyukovskyy, and welcome to the TechMates podcast, where my partner Hendrik and I explore how Kiwi and Aussie founders are reshaping the future and what sets them apart. Hendrik and I have been part of successful companies in Silicon Valley and Europe, and now bring that expertise to partner with entrepreneurs in Australasia. By sharing the personal stories of successful Kiwi and Aussie founders and how they got here, we hope to inspire you to dream big. This is TechMates, bringing an outsider's perspective to the stories of those daring to disrupt down under. Let's dive in.
Cool. Hey, Max, welcome to TechMates.
Hendrik, thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Great. We want to talk about your background. I want to get to know you better, and we obviously want to get to know Zenno Space better. You're on a mission to electrify space. Super exciting, and we're super happy to be part of the journey. But yeah, maybe we can start with your background. You know, where are you from? Where did you grow up? And what was your childhood like?
All right. Well, I was actually born in Siberia, in actually just a few months before the collapse of USSR. Yeah. So technically, I was born in the USSR. The country does not exist anymore. Yeah.
Wow.
So my ancestors, my family, for various reasons, ended up in Siberia and have actually very diverse background: German, Polish, Lithuanian, Ukrainian, Russian. Yeah, Siberia back in the day was like a huge sort of area where a lot of people got mixed up for various reasons. But anyway, so I was born, and there wasn't really much around. There wasn't really much around us in Siberia except for this huge monument, which was the landing site of the first woman in space. That's where she landed. So space was on my mind all the time growing up because of that prominent landmark there. Anyway, and so I moved to Moscow for studies with my family when I was 6, and I went to an engineering.
Max, when you saw that monument, what did you? I mean, sure, there's plenty of monuments, right? Like that you see as a kid. Why did that one have a particular influence on you?
I mean, it looks monumental. It looks very Soviet.
Is it really big?
Yeah, it's huge, and also for some reason that was the thing that sort of seemed most exciting to me growing up. The idea of space. I think Russians historically are obsessed with space, especially the Soviets. They're like, so that's unsurprising. But particularly in Siberia,
it's
the launch site is
Valentina
not up.
Tereshkova,
Yeah,
right? That one?
that's right. Yeah, Tereshkova. Yeah, it's an Altai. Yeah.
Were you the only one who was like fascinated by this, or were other people also like similarly fascinated by it?
I don't know. Like I thought everybody was. I thought everybody
Okay.
was, but I didn't explicitly check. I thought
Okay,
it
okay,
was like
okay.
implied.
This
Yeah.
is the one, right?
So I moved to Moscow. That's the one. That's the one. Yeah. No,
Oh,
but
is it?
hold on. The one, the second row, leftmost image. That's the one.
And
Yeah.
I was just thinking,
Sorry.
would your parents take you there to kind of talk about space, or like how did you
No, no.
kind
You
of
just
come across it?
every time you commute, to a major city, because I was born in a village. Like it's a sort of a farm, with a very small population. So every time you commute to a major city, you drive past this thing. It's like literally
yeah.
nothing around it.
Wow.
It's just Siberia.
So seeing this monument, what did you feel? Like, did you think it'd be cool to, I don't know, go into space myself, or?
It just makes you wonder, like, well, how come we have this here in the middle of nowhere? And then you talk about it, think, reflect on it, and it's always on the back of your mind. Like, that people did great things back in the day somehow, but for some reason we're no longer doing great things. Like that's the vibe that I had growing up. Like
Hmm.
some people before me, they did great things. They put these monuments here. They went to space. Women went to space. They landed here. But growing up there, I didn't see any of this anymore. It was just like regular life. Actually, Altai is actually the poorest region of Russia. I think it's the poorest region of Russia. Yeah, so life was very simple, very basic. I was like, how do you go from being in space to just like barely surviving? Like that's what it felt like in the 90s in Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union. People were just surviving. And then my mom moved me to Moscow when I was 6, and I went to actually a humanities and arts school. I studied literature and history, all these things, and languages. And then something came to my mind. I have no idea what happened, but I became absolutely fascinated with physics and with mathematics. I was always
Mm.
good at it, just like, top of the class, whatever, but, I wasn't very competitive in that particular school because it was an art school. But then for some reason, oh, actually, I met the guy. He was from Moscow Engineering and Physics Institute, and he was like teaching kids physics for free because he was so fascinated with it. He was teaching kids physics for free after school, like no credit, nothing. You can go and attend the class. And he was just like obsessed with physics. I was like, this guy is so cool. Like,
That's
the drive that he had was so, like I was excited by the drive that he had. And he was like a young
how
dude. He was
old
like
were you?
19. I was probably 14 at the time.
Okay, and you were in this
Yeah,
art
14.
school, and they wouldn't really focus on physics, but you found this guy who was kind of really, really
This
fascinated by
guy,
it. You sort of, yeah,
yeah.
jumped into
That's
it.
right. He showed up and started teaching physics for free. Say, hey guys, if you want, I'm teaching physics after school. No extra credit for it, nothing. I'm doing it for free. Whoever is keen, come in. I'm like, well, this guy, that's unusual. You don't hear this very often. So I started attending his classes, and it was fascinating. He was talking to us about how the world works, like, and I found it so fascinating. He could like break down problems, like the basics, like mechanics, like, and I was like, man, this is fascinating. And I asked him what uni do you go to? He said Moscow Engineering and Physics Institute, which is like Russia's top engineering and physics school. I was like, man, I want to go there too. He was like, it's very hard. You have to like to get in. He said before you go there, you can go into like a lyceum, like a specialized school, a specialized school that is sort of like governed by that institution. And in that school, you can sort of get prepared for the university years. Anyway, so I was like, yeah, I want to go into that school. He was like, well, you can't. You need like full scholarship. That's the only way to get in, and you need to like win an Olympiad or two in physics or mathematics, and that's the only way to get in. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna win the Olympiad. He was like, bro, you're absolutely horrible. You don't understand any physics or mathematics. Either way, you win.
So
So.
you weren't actually very good, you're saying.
Yeah, like well, compared to his level of requirement, like at my
Uh,
school, it was really good. I was like, man, I'm top of class. He was like, man, you're absolute bottom. Like you're very bad. And that got me going. I was like, hey, no, yeah, I can understand physics and mathematics, and I got obsessed with it. I started taking, like two or three. I continued going to his classes and started taking more extracurricular classes as well. Two or three other tutors, just becoming really obsessed, about winning those Olympiads. And in a year and a bit, like a year and a half or so, I actually attended, maths and physics Olympiads, and I got second place and third place
wow.
in those
Wow.
Olympiads. We don't get so excited because a lot of people get second and third place. It's not like it's only one person. It's like probably
Yeah.
like I would say maybe dozens or hundreds of people, Russia in the entirety of the country get that placement. But anyhow, it was enough for me to get admitted to this like school, LIC. I barely scraped the bottom of the barrel there. But I was all of a
Amazing.
sudden I found myself amongst these like super smart physics and mathematics kids, like super gifted. And they're such different people, they function different way. That was so fascinating.
How
Anyway, and so
how
I
how
studied
how
there for
how
2 years.
how are they different? How do they function differently?
Well, some of them, that was surprising the most to me was a guy who could literally like see mathematics or feel mathematics without having to be literate or study mathematics. You could,
Hmm,
you could put problems in front of him and he would come up with the most innovative and like unseen before solutions. You know how
hmm,
like regular people get trained in mathematics, right?
right.
This guy, he carried a pencil in his pocket. He had no fucking bag or nothing. He would just go to school with a pencil, if anything. He also carried boiled chicken breast for lunch in his pocket
In his
without
pocket?
wrapping. Yeah, without wrapping nothing.
But
So
they
he
like
was
they would
very
get dirty,
impractical.
no? And
Yeah, yeah, like with pocket fluff on it. So he was very impractical in some areas, but he was an amazing guy with a very pure soul, and he was a great friend of mine.
Do you
So
know what
you could
happened
put
to
any
him?
problem.
Do you know
Yeah, he
what
went
he
to
ended up
Moscow.
doing?
He went to Moscow
Okay.
State. Moscow State University is like one of the best. Well, like yeah, it's the best school in Russia for mathematics, and he went a full scholarship there. But anyway, so he could solve any problem whatsoever, and he would come up with solutions that even teachers never seen before. He could like sort of like process it somehow in his brain, and he didn't know how. To him, it was obvious kind of thing. And
wow.
yeah, so people like this, I'm not like this. Like in mathematics in particular, like I trained. I know the methods and so on. And physics is a bit more intuitive for me than mathematics. Uh, I can visualize and see it visually, but some guys, they're absolutely like next level. Yeah, and a lot of guys were just plain smart, like like your regular smart. Like you show something to him, and he would just like understand it very fast and do exactly how it was taught to him or to her. Yeah, so great people. Very very ambitious, very intelligent people, and a lot of my classmates went on to work at like CERN or other institutions in Europe. They're doing great and impactful work.
And during your teenage years, did you already always think about space when you were kind of pursuing physics and mathematics, or did that come later?
Mostly, I was thinking at the time of Lyceum, I was fascinated with understanding the way the world works from the physics and mathematics standpoint, sort of natural philosophy angle. So that natural philosophy angle was very interesting to me to just understanding what is how exactly does the world work, does the world function, what is the truth of it, and then I've sort of revisited my interest in space when I moved to New Zealand. I left Russia when I was sort of late 17, early 18 year of my life, and came to Auckland to study. Surprisingly, actually, I wanted to study finance because I thought, okay, I have a grasp or I have a reasonable understanding of how the world works from the physics and mathematics standpoint, and I wanted to come in and study, how the finances work. That combination seemed like a good sort of combination. So I came to New Zealand, to Auckland
Maybe Max,
for a number of reasons.
can you tell us? Can
Yeah,
you tell us
sorry, I
why?
jumped.
Yeah, why you
Yeah.
came to New Zealand?
I had scholarship to study in Russia, full scholarship. I did not need to pay for a great university, all this stuff. But it felt a little bit constraining to me at the time, from the standpoint of being able to come up with innovative ideas without having like the systemic pushback. You know what I mean? The systemic pushback was quite high in Russia at the time. I'm not sure how it is these days. I don't visit very often. I've been there in years now. But like my thinking has always been a little bit unusual. So I'd come up with some edge ideas, and they'll be like, it would be an idea that at first sight may seem like, man, this is a strange idea. But actually, if you think about it, it's not that strange. You know what I mean? And so I wanted to make sure that I can come up with these ideas and assess them without having like by default being disregarded. Because I felt like, I mean, some, great things may come out of this sort of approach to life. Yeah, anyway, so
Do you remember
something
any
didn't sit quite.
specific examples?
Not really. I don't really remember. I had a million ideas. I always have a million ideas, but
You would try to like you would go into class and you would say, "Hey, like I have this like random idea," or you'd say, "I have this really new way of trying to solve this particular
okay.
problem."
I can explain the overall thing would be like, hey guys, here's the thing, right? And because Russians, they have such pride about their ability to do engineering and physics and mathematics. They have so much pride about it because they've achieved a lot, right? I would come in and because I was amongst these people and I had, same knowledge as they had, but I was coming in from a very different environment of my, humanities and arts and philosophy angle, I would come in with my different vocabulary, different way of thinking, and say, hey, this way. And they'll be like, man, this is not how we reason in this area. You know what I mean? We would, like, this is not the right way to do it kind of thing.
Mm.
And we're like, yeah, sure, it may not be the right way, but have you guys considered this? They're like, man, we don't consider things like this kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like a lot of, and that would be the vibe. It would be unspoken, but that would be the vibe,
Interesting. So do you feel like yeah, so it sounds like you were sort of like a little bit of an oddball given your humanities background, right? Surrounded
Yeah.
by these like hardcore math. So how did that, I
Yes.
mean, how do you
Yeah.
think that shaped you? How do you think that like made you kind of think about the world? Like it's like you got these ideas. I mean, did you think that humanities angle is what sort of prompted you to have different ways of thinking? And then kind of did the constant like sort of like getting smashed down, did that make you feel, I don't know, sad, excited, did that motivate you, did that discourage you?
It was a little bit sad. It was a little bit sad, but like I had a lot of excitement coming in from within all the time because kept having these ideas and they would give me a lot of excitement. Like the vigor for life comes in from within, like I'm like, this will be fascinating, and then I would pitch it to somebody and they won't get it because I'm not, speaking their formulaic language perhaps or whatever that is.
Why,
And
why
did
New
you feel like
Zealand?
the humanities kind of background, was that like, or did you at any point regret having that? Did you wish, man, I wish I would just like be like them, studied math from when I was like two?
Yeah, yeah. When I was at Lyceum, even though I loved it so much, it was hard because I was a misfit there. Like I could do the mathematics and physics, but
So
somehow I was
you,
still
you were
like
a
a
misfit
misfit.
amongst misfits.
Yes, and then it was so strange. And I loved it. I think those are like probably two of the most exciting years of my life. Like they were formative years. Like I love it, but it was difficult at the same time.
Hmm.
Anyhow, so I felt that pressure to leave, and so I left the country, despite having the scholarship. Actually, the funny thing happened is when at that lyceum, when you graduate, the head teacher has the right to recommend only two students per year, per cohort, for an elite degree. So when you go to university, there's a faculty that takes people from this school, only from this school, and only by recommendation, some whatnot. Like, so crazy stuff, all right?
Which school?
From this, like it's called a lyceum. It has
Oh,
a number,
but I
but
mean,
whatever.
going to which university? Is it a specific university?
Moscow Engineering Physics Institute. Yeah, it's
Ah,
been
okay.
renamed to National Nuclear Research University. That's the
Mhm.
new name of it. But anyway, so and the head teacher said, "Hey Max, I can recommend you. I have two recommendations to make. I'm recommending one of these guys, one of the guys from your class, which is like this, like great physicist. Like his name was Andre. I'm sure he's doing great things these days. Like legitimately great physicist. And I can recommend you." I'm like, "Are you insane? Like I'm a fucking art student. Like I'm just doing math and physics here. But like, why would you offer this to me?" And so I disregarded her.
What did she say? Why did she offer it to you?
I didn't think I was good at physics because I was so unconventional about it. But
Well,
she
but did
wanted to
she?
recommend me because she saw something in it. She saw something in me, but I didn't believe her. I was like, "You have no idea what you're doing." I disregarded
Wow.
her. Yeah, I look back into this quite often. I was like, "Hold on,
Wow.
you think that like this legitimately good guy and me?" I'm like, "I'm just a strange guy doing physics and math. Like I shouldn't be recommended. You only have two recommendations to make. Yeah, you choose wisely."
So,
Wow.
so
So
why
so you
why
so,
did you
so you
decide to why did you decide to go to New Zealand then of all countries? I mean, like the world is a big place. Why New Zealand?
Oh yeah. So well, New Zealand obviously is a Western country. We speak English here in New Zealand. It's a developed country as well, and also it combines beautifully, beautiful nature and low population density with advanced, reasonably advanced, society and civilization. And I thought that is really nice because I wanted to be in the Western world. A lot of my ancestors come from the Western world. I have Dutch and German, background. And I thought, okay, I want to be back in the West, and I really appreciated the ability to spend some time in the nature or a lot of time in the nature while having access to, good education and, and great capabilities sort of within the country. And I needed that time, I thought, to reflect on what to do next. So I really wanted to find out what to do next. And I mean, it's worked out. Also, another thing is, I grew up reading these books. They're sort of popular in Europe by Julius Verne. Mark, you may be familiar. He
yeah.
was writing a lot about like this Pacific area and the exploration of the Pacific and the islands of the Pacific. Yeah, so that was always in my mind as well
Interesting.
growing up. Fascinated with that region. I'm
So,
actually
so
these days
you,
married to a Pacific woman.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Wow. So you kind of were thinking, I'll become an explorer. I mean, yeah, what were you thinking? Because you were like so focused on math and physics. Do you feel like maybe that discouraged you a little bit, where you felt like maybe there's something else for me? Like, 'cause you got, it sounds like you had the opportunity to go to the best, to the MIT of Russia, right? Like, but it sounds like, yeah, you took a
uh,
very kind of different path. Very, like you could have gone to Europe, for example, as well, right? You went to like the opposite side of the world,
yeah,
feeling like a little bit of the
yeah.
explorer vibe.
Yeah, well, I wanted to go see what's out there. New Zealand seemed like the right place, and I thought, okay, I've comprehended mathematics and physics. I had a good foundation of it by then, and sort of I had a green light path for studies in that area. But I thought I really want to understand finances, and in Russia you can't really understand finances. That was my thinking at the time. I was like, Russia historically is a communist, country, Soviet Union for the last like 100 years, and Russia was a young country, and they really admired, all this like engineering science background, but they weren't placing a lot of emphasis on how to conduct business, how to maintain a business, how these things work. And I really wanted to learn that. I thought I'll go to New Zealand. Anyway, so I ended up here. But on arrival to New Zealand, to my surprise, they said that my education was not sufficient enough for them to accept me to university. I was like, huh? I went through best school in Russia. They're like, no, it's not good enough. You have to do like another like foundation year, like 9 months of studies again. I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And so, I, I did this with the idea of getting into business school at Oakland University. But 3 quarters through that year, I got so bored of accounting. I was like, man, adding up 1,000 plus 1,000 plus 1,500 on the calculator, this is just like soul crushing. I was like, there's no way I can do it. And so I had a conversation with the dean. I said, hey, could I please switch to engineering? In fact, yeah, I want to do engineering. I thought I'll go back to that thing and just get a degree first in engineering and then maybe do a master's degree in finances. He was like, it's too late,
Mm.
Max. Max, it's too late. You've missed 3 quarters of a year. You've missed all the tests. You've missed the papers. You haven't even taken physics, because you're aiming for like a business school. I negotiated with him really hard. I said, please let me do it. Please let me just sit the exams. He said, okay, screw you, sit the exam. Whatever you get in the exam, I'll give you as a final grade, and whatever you've missed, I'll give you an average grade per class. So I took up, I set physics and mathematics, calculus, statistics, and a few other papers, and I got into engineering school at Auckland University. And I attended,
How'd you do on those
first year when
exams?
I got like 80 something, 86 or 87%, whatever, without going to class. I just did
Okay.
from my memories.
I I
Yeah,
I
because
I
like
was
I think
expecting you
the challenge
to get
was
like
English.
100 or something.
No, no, the greatest challenge was English. I got tested on arrival at that school. I got tested on arrival, and apparently my test result was second best in the history of the school. I was like, okay,
Wow.
so maybe I didn't take it seriously enough at the time of the examination, but the class content is slightly different, and the methods of the solutions, the methods that are deployed are also a little bit different. And I mean, fair enough. I knew I needed to adhere to the program,
And
but it was good enough.
when you were in university, did you already have an idea of what you want to do afterwards, or did you have like a million ideas of what you were going to do afterwards?
I was still narrowing down. I realized that, okay, business. I thought I needed to understand finances, but I realized that I want to have a foundation in engineering and physics like I was originally doing it. So I did first year of engineering, and then at Auckland University in particular, uh, after first year you have to pick a sort of a major, and there are sort of seven or nine available majors to pick from. I had no idea what to do just yet, but one of them was very competitive. It was called biomedical engineering. They only accept something like 15 or 20 students per year out of 600. And you need to be, whatever. You need to get like the highest GPA, whatnot. I thought, yeah, I'll give it a crack. I'll try it. And I got in. And so that's actually what I studied originally, biomedical
Oh wow.
engineering, which is a part of the engineering science, faculty of engineering science. Yeah, where that's specific science essentially is picked for you. So essentially, how the way it works is, if you study engineering science, it's mostly engineering physics. That's what it's known as in the US, engineering physics. But in New Zealand, your choice of science can be whatever scientific paper you take. And biomedical engineering essentially is a major where your science is picked for you as med papers and bio papers, so that you
Hmm.
progress in
So,
that
so,
direction.
so you picked that because it was competitive, not because you were particularly interested in that specific field.
I was interested. It sounded fascinating, but yeah, it was mostly a chance like, hey, like I don't know what to do just yet. It was still early, and I thought, yeah, I'll just, you know, I'll make the hardest thing available for myself, and then think later.
How did you kind of then end up going into what you're doing now? So where, I mean, obviously the fascination for space was always there, but when did you decide, okay, I want to go down that route?
After some time in biomedical engineering, I've realized that, okay, this is not what I want either, and I've realized that, okay, it's not the first time I've experienced that. I've switched. I came in to study, finances. I switched to engineering. I'm in biomedical engineering now. It still is not what I want. So I actually decided to drop out. I was very scared of it because, first of all, that meant that I was no longer able to stay in New Zealand because I was on a
Mm.
student visa. Secondly, the decision to drop out was driven like by intellectual conclusions. Like I didn't want to do something that I wasn't convinced is the right use of resource and it would be a value add to humanity, to people. But I didn't know how I could add value. And so I was very scared, but I dropped out nonetheless, based on
Wait,
my conclusion that, I
why
shouldn't be
didn't you
doing it.
just finish it out and then figure it out later?
Well, yeah, I thought I needed to sort of understand what is needed first, and also I didn't want to spend parents' money on this. That was the take. I
Mm.
was like, man, it's costing so much money, and I'm not even certain, that that's the right investment to make. So I thought, okay, screw it. I can't be so responsible. I just dropped out.
It sounds like a lot like Steve Jobs' story. He also kind of had a little bit of that.
He went to India though. I didn't go to
But no,
India.
but he went when he went to college, he was
Yeah.
also like kind of didn't realize the purpose of it and didn't want to spend his
Yeah.
parents' money. So he, what year were you?
Yeah.
So the
What did
dean
he
must have
do?
been like, man, first I helped you switch, now you're dropping out. What an asshole.
Yeah. My parents stopped talking to me for 6 years. They're like, this guy's an idiot. I didn't speak to my parents for 6 years.
Oh my
Um,
God.
I really felt very strongly that that's what I needed to do to determine how to deploy the resource of myself. That's how I thought at the time. I needed to deploy the resource of myself with the greatest impact, to be helpful to people, to add value. And I didn't want to just do the hard thing because it's hard or whatever. It made no sense. But anyway, so I dropped out, and then the immediate problem is, okay, so well, if you're no longer a student, then you have to like leave in like a few months' time when the student visa expires. I thought this is a very tough problem. How do you solve this without connections, education, or money? Because I had no money anymore, no connections, no education. I was like, man, I really want to stay in New Zealand. And so
What did you like? What did you like about New Zealand? Why do you want to stay here?
education was really good. Like I enjoyed, the Western education, the Western format of education, studying in English. Yeah, it felt like the right thing to do to stay in New Zealand, to continue to be in New Zealand, as opposed to
And
going
how
back
was
to
it?
Moscow. It felt more liberating in a way.
How was it different? What did you like about it?
As I said, a bit less dogmatic. Like Russia felt, especially Moscow and like that university, it was like quite elitist, quite dogmatic. They have like decades and centuries of their like, ways they do things and how they do things, and like they're set in stone. And they're good.
Mhm.
The quality is good, but they're quite set in stone in their ways. And New Zealand didn't feel like it. Like you can sort of, come up with any
Mhm.
idea, you can do whatever you want. Nothing's set in stone. We're a young nation, sort of just established a country like 100 years ago. Anything goes. If it works kind of thing. That's how it felt.
Interesting.
Less
Interesting.
constraining.
Oh, that's
So,
cool.
so how did you solve the problem of staying in New Zealand then?
The most insane way, I started the business. I thought, oh, I'm just gonna start a business. Just gonna start making money, gonna meet people or something. I don't know. And my strength was I played with, like a lot of kids maybe do with web development growing up. I actually had like made a website for my school, when I was like 12 or whatever. They ran my website, HTML, CSS, all that stuff. So I was like, I'm just gonna like code websites for people here in Auckland just to make some money. Maybe I meet some people. And I lucked out. I was pitching a website, uh, to one guy who was in the property development business, like building commercial buildings, commercial high-rise buildings here in Auckland. I was pitching to him. He was like, "Man, I really don't need your service. Like, I'm okay with my website." I was like, "Damn it!" But he said, "But I do need help." He said, "I'm looking for a manager to help me with my construction work, with development of these buildings." And while I resonated with the guy very much, like I liked him during the meeting, and he was fascinating. He was an immigrant himself, uh, from Iran originally, but he moved to Germany when he was 17, and he was an industrial designer by education. A very, very smart, unusual thinker, very well presented, very intelligent. I was like, man, this guy wants to work with me. But I told him, look, I know nothing about this. He said, as long as you have attention to detail and great desire to succeed, I will teach you the rest. And I thought attention to detail is what I have. Like I'm obsessed with details, and also like I have a lot of drive. So I thought, okay. He said, and also if you work for me, you can become a New Zealander in 5 years' time. Like I'll help you to become a New Zealander. I said, could you please give me like some time to reflect on this? And overnight I thought about it. And in the morning I said, yeah, let's do it. When do we start? And it was like December 23 or December 24th, something. It was Christmas. He said, we'll start on January 11th. I'll see you in the office. I said, sweet. And I showed up and I worked there for like 5, 6 years with this
Oh,
man.
wow.
He taught me a lot of stuff about New Zealand. He taught me a lot about business. I managed buildings for him, managed projects. It was great. And then and then I became a New Zealander as a skilled migrant.
Oh,
Great.
that's cool.
In that time,
Did
did you?
that, were you, yeah, go ahead.
No, just in that time, did you always think about like, sometimes I want to go back to like physics and space and what was kind of your state of mind in those 5 years?
That was actually the best thing that happened to me, guys, because all of a sudden I had no pressure, no expectations. I was a dropout. I was like, for real, a fucking dropout. All of my classmates were either studying, like a year or two ahead of me, and my New Zealand classmates were ahead of me. I was a dropout. And it was beautiful because I had no pressure. I've already by default failed, so to speak. You know what I mean? That's how I had it in my mind. I'm not on any path whatsoever. I had to make my own path, and it was actually quite liberating because I could, for real, reflect on what is valuable and what do I want to do, what fascinates me, and why. And so I started volunteering at the observatory at Auckland Observatory, so telling people, pointing telescopes at the night sky, and for people telling them, educating them on the night sky, and reading a lot of books in their library, and sort of dove back to my passion for space. And I reflected on the fact that you know, there is the last frontier that is unexplored, physically speaking. Like we've explored, the oceans are also, unexplored, but the surface of the planet is pretty well explored. That frontier is unexplored, and we intuitively understand that there's a lot of value in that, in exploring space. I mean, we got value here on Earth from GPS, all the maps, whatnot, connectivity, and so on, that is coming from us exploring space. But fundamentally, I really wanted to push into the unknown, understand, how the universe works, what is beyond Earth. That was the desire that was overwhelming in me. And I also saw the industry, the commercial space industry maturing, at that time. Like SpaceX was the first commercial company that I was aware of doing something commercial, and then Rocket Lab in New Zealand. And then I thought about it. I thought I really want to dedicate my life to advancing the exploration of space. I thought, hey, I actually have the right skill set. I'm literate in physics and engineering. I understand, I have the ability to see the large picture, which I think is necessary, which I'm bringing in from my sort of philosophy and arts, background. And I thought I really want to concentrate on space. And so I spent 5 years reading books and educating myself in various libraries while working in that company towards citizenship. I spent that time educating myself on the state of the art in the space industry and the problems, on what the future of it is. And the moment I got my visa, I went back to the University of Auckland immediately. I went back and I studied to the Faculty of Engineering Science, which is like the superset of biomedical engineering, and immediately went into the Auckland program for space systems, which was the undergraduate program. And my thinking was that at the time, I realized that rocketry is a solved problem. Not only it's solved from the engineering standpoint, because we've had rockets for decades by then, but it was also solved from the commercial standpoint. I could see SpaceX, they had their rocket. I was like, yeah, that's fine. We have access to space sorted out. Sure, there's a lot of room for optimization and perfection, whatnot, and then over the next decades, a number of players will emerge and they compete, and whoever will win will win. But it doesn't change really anything, materially speaking, for the industry. I thought the next frontier is in-space operations. Like, what is the next thing for in-space? How is the industry going to progress? And I've realized that we were fundamentally looking at three large bottlenecks under the umbrella of, so when we go to space, I've realized that when we go to space, we're fundamentally still very dependent on the resources of Earth. We're sort of tethered to Earth, like by an umbilical cord in a way. Because every time we go to space, our satellites, they need to be agile in space. If they're not agile, if they don't have control over them, then they can't be useful in space. But our satellites rely on fuel that we bring with us from Earth. I thought, hey, you can't really build anything sustainable. Sure, you can get away. You can build some businesses in the very short term, but ultimately you have to go away from this to build sustainable businesses and sustainable industry. That was number one problem. If you run out of fuel in space, you're screwed. The second problem I've realized is that, hey, every time we go to space, we get absolutely fried by radiation. Like radiation here on Earth, we're protected by the magnetic field of Earth, but in space, electronics gets absolutely obliterated by radiation, and people, well, even worse than electronics, you can't have sustained presence in space without radiation protection. And the third problem that I saw was that we did at the time and still do, like most of the stuff on Earth, like we could construct everything on Earth in one piece and then we'll launch it in the rocket, and whatever fits in the rocket, that's how much we can launch. And if it doesn't fit, well, it doesn't go up, you know what I mean? The only exception is like International Space Station, but that's sort of bespoke one-off project. We don't have a convenient, easy to use interface for sophisticated in-space operations like assembly, servicing, maintenance, whatnot. We're very primitive. So I thought these are the three pillars that are presenting big problems, and I really wanted to build enabling technology for the space industry to thrive for the next few centuries. Sort of like I wanted to build primitive technologies, but not in the way that they're stupid, in the way that they're very robust, very reliable, and they're like a wheel. You know what I mean? Like a wheel is a primitive
like
technology,
fundamental
let's
building
say.
blocks.
Yeah, fundamental, but wheel is so simple to replicate, and it's so widely spread. So I wanted to build technologies like this for the industry, for the in-space industry, for satellites. And I thought, okay, there's one thing that is missing currently. It's an ability to generate a force reliably in space from the resource of space. And that's how we ended up working with magnetic fields, in particular with large and dense magnetic fields that are generated and sustained very efficiently and effectively. If you generate a magnetic field in space,
when you say it's force in space, what do you mean by that?
So, like, to do something with, in our three-dimensional sort of mechanical world, you got to affect it, right? If you have no effect, you really can't change the state of the universe. And so you need, I was looking for an effector in a way, and I sort of looked at the range of forces that are available to us in this universe, and there are some of them only present on very small scales, and the other ones were already exploring in the space industry, but mostly they were finite, like they were relying on like finite resources. And I thought, hold on a second, if we could enable the magnetic interaction forces in space, that would be an absolute breakthrough. Because then if we had a magnetic force in space, we could fuel that force by the energy that is coming directly from the sun, and we can then use that force to solve many problems. Like when it comes to satellite fuel limitation, you could propel satellites with only magnetic forces, and you can point satellites with only magnetic forces. You can also protect the interior of satellites with the magnetic fields, which is a very natural way of doing this. This is how Earth itself protects us from the radiation damage. You can use magnetic forces to enable interactions between satellites as well. Like when they come close to each other, they can interact like two magnets do when they come close together. And if you can control, the shape of that field and the intensity of it, then you can very precisely control the nature of that interaction. I thought, hey, this is a huge potential here in enabling, a force generator like this, like a magnetic engine essentially.
And what
But
are the other kind of
obviously,
options for generating force like that exist on Earth besides
in
magnetic?
space, we can obviously use fuel, we can use like gas thrusters, we can use electric thrusters, which are so they all rely on the fact that you have some matter that you carry with you, you know, and you can either use it very inefficiently, like gas thrusters would. They use the molecules of gas, but you have an immediate and a highly noticeable impact. You can go very fast. You can change the attitude. You can go change your delta V, but you run out of that fuel fast as well. Or you can use your fuel that you bring with you very effectively. Like electropropulsion, but then the effects are not noticeable, not very noticeable, and fundamentally still is a finite propellant. Yeah.
So what, the magnetic thing relies on there being some kind of magnet somewhere, right?
Yeah, magnetic thing relies on magnetic interactions in general, like, interactions with either charged particles or with other magnetic fields.
But
Well,
I
you could
mean,
argue
it
that charged
relies on there
particle has a,
being a magnet in space somewhere, right? So it'd need to be around like a like an Earth or another planet, right?
it depends on the use cases, but even in deep space, you can still interact with the magnetic field of that are present in deep space, like between Mars and Earth, let's say, for attitude stabilization. There are papers written on this. It is feasible. It's not been done before, but it is feasible. It can be done. Same with around the moon. Like moon has a very weak magnetic field, but it has a magnetic field. Sun itself has a magnetic field. Earth has a magnetic field. Jupiter has a magnetic field. So if you're talking about interactions between satellite and a third body, or like an external magnetic field, there are possibilities there. But if you're talking about interactions between satellite and other satellites, that is not dependent on any kind of external magnetic field. You know what I mean? You can be in absolute magnetic vacuum, so to speak, and still have multiple satellites interact with each other to change relative position with respect to each other. And when we're talking about radiation protection, also, you only need one magnetic field. You don't need a complementary field. You can surround your satellite with a magnetic shield, and you can use that to deflect charged particle radiation. And there are dozens of applications, Mark. I just bucketed them into the three most prominent sort of, pillars, but there are dozens of applications like, you can control plasma, for improved version of plasma propulsion, or for shielding of satellites during reentry, or for shielding of hypersonic vehicles. There's a lot of untapped potential in this technology. Yeah. In fact, when I came up with this idea, I thought surely it's been done, right? But then I couldn't understand. Okay, I
So what
looked
was
into
the
it very
idea?
briefly, like literally.
What was the idea that you came up with?
The original idea was to take control over satellite agility with magnetic fields in Earth orbit. It was like, okay, surely it's been done. Like the Earth has a very noticeable and strong magnetic field. We all know it intuitively. Like it interacts with the needle of a compass. Like it's a layman's knowledge. you know. And then I thought, surely if you generate a magnetic field in a satellite, you can then control the position of satellite in orbit. And then I've done some studies on it. I've done some, back on the envelope calculations. I thought you should be able to achieve it, but not from the engineering standpoint, from the physics standpoint, it's doable. Then I found
Mhm.
some papers on it, and I very quickly realized that people have thought about it, but engineering of it was infeasible for decades. In fact, it wasn't feasible for like pretty much a few years before we started Zenno. Maybe 2, 3 years before I started Zenno, that's when it became feasible
And what
from an
what
engineering
what
What
made
standpoint.
it
did
feasible? What changed?
Okay, here's the thing. You need to be able to generate very strong magnetic fields, and you need to be able to maintain them. And in this world, there are two ways to generate a magnetic field. Well, you can take a permanent magnet, like a chunk, okay, but then you can't control it; it's always there. Okay, we disregard this. It's not an option. The second way is to generate a magnet on demand, which is called an electromagnet. And to make an electromagnet, you take a piece of wire, you coil the wire, coil it, and then you run electrical current through it. Okay, and the more current you run through it and the more coils you have, the stronger the magnetic field is that the wire generates. That's how universe works. It's very unusual. It's called a solenoid in physics, whatever. Uh, okay, the limitation is the regular wire, copper wire, or regular conductors, they hate current running through them. They have resistance to it. And the more current you run through it, the hotter it gets, the worse this gets. It ends up being not possible to generate anything that is meaningful in space. Because satellites have very limited power, limited space, limited ability to cool things. So essentially, it's impossible to use conventional conductors to generate any meaningful magnetic field whatsoever. I didn't want to give up on the idea. I thought, okay, as a physicist, because I was trained to think from first principles, like what are the variables in these equations which need to be sort of addressed in order for this thing to work? And I thought, okay, well, in principle, if I had no resistance in the wire, I could push a lot of current through the wire, right? And if I push a lot of current, I can generate a massive field. And if there's no resistance and I'm pushing a lot of current through, then I can also sustain that field for a very long time at no energy cost, no penalty. It's like almost like making a permanent magnet in a way, on demand. I was like, man, that would be an absolute beautiful, solution to this problem. And then I realized that the only way to make it work is to work with superconducting material. And superconducting material is another wonder of this universe. Some materials in this world have zero resistance to flow of electric current, but under very specific conditions. Like they need to be almost as cold as the rest of as the deep space is, like 3-4 Kelvin. Unfortunately, it's not practical. You can't make it work. But due to some clever engineering in the last couple of decades, and due to essentially like a few years before Zenno came to be as a business, a technology appeared in this world, which is known as, high temperature superconducting wire. Essentially, it's a man-made replication of naturally occurring superconductors. Okay, we take a piece of wire, make a ceramic material, we deposit many layers, 6 layers onto it, and under specific conditions, this technology allows you to conduct a lot of current through at no penalty. It still is, still requires, low temperatures, even though it's called a high temperature superconductor. It's only high temperature compared to the absolute zero of this world. Yeah, but essentially, if you can achieve like negative 200 Celsius approximately, you can use these materials, and you can make magnets out of them, and you can energize these magnets in unusual ways to make them more efficient. But essentially, the engineering design closed, and I closed that engineering design while at the University of Auckland.
What do you mean closed it?
I realized that I can close the design. Like I can make a design that works with the materials that are available to me, with the technology that is available to me. I was like, hey, maybe like a little bit of improvement here and there, and it will be absolutely like perfection. So I went to I started asking people around, like professors, say, hey guys, I have this idea. It might work commercially. Like if this works commercially, like we can actually like add a lot of value to the industry. And then in the short term, we can add a lot of value to the industry. But in the long term, it's a massive, like revolutionary sort of paradigm shift for how we do things in space. And it's one of those like primitives on which you can build the industry for centuries to come. And so, people appreciated that sort of, the idea, the thesis. And I got introduced to an investment body within the University of Auckland called Auckland Uni Services. They normally invest into like postdocs, whatnot, that done some research, generated some IP. But I showed up as an undergrad. I was like, hey guys, I'm looking for some funding. They're like, man, we don't normally do it, but okay, just pitch to us. And I pitched them for 9 months straight. Like I pitched them so many times, but every time they got me closer and closer to de-risking their appetite. And eventually they said, okay, screw it. They got the credible people, they've done the sanity checks, done the diligence, and said, screw it, man, let's give it a crack. Let's give it a shot. Here's like $100,000. Go and test the fundamental sort of enabling concepts of this technology, which is, can you make it work in the environment of space? Can you make this electromagnet in the space environment? And we tested it and it worked. Like, we got 100 grand and it worked. And so they funded us another couple of times. Like I got another a few $100,000 from them. And then New Zealand government invested, and then VCs invested, and the rest is history. So we're on the path. Now we actually have one of them in space, and we're shipping product. So it's been a 7-year 7-year long research and development process. We've raised the largest seed round in the history of New Zealand. We are the world's first company to pioneer superconducting technologies for space. We're the world's first company to have flown anything that's superconducting into space. We have global patents that are granted to us now that protect any use case of a superconducting magnet in space for us. With that, we're about to deploy the world's first superconducting product, actually commercial product into space, this year, 2025.
Wow.
So it's been
Exciting.
quite a journey.
I was wondering in the beginning when you had this idea, did people, 'cause you had several types of ideas in Russia and people just like kind of smashed it down. What was it like here? Was it different?
Yeah, because nobody knows what the fuck is going on. Like, which is good. Like, people don't know what's possible. Like in Russia, here's the thing. In Russia, Mark, I go to some dude, right? And I say, here's the idea, professor, here's the idea. And then professor says, well, Max, you know what? I worked on the Sputnik, I worked on this, on that. And you know what? We've looked into it's not possible kind of thing. They'll shut it down because they're experienced. Here, nobody
Uh,
knows what space is. So everyone is forced to think from first principles.
Interesting.
There's no like everyone, just like myself, I'm like, hey guys, from first principles, from physics standpoint, it should work, right? Everyone was like, yeah. Like we spoke to physics professor at the University of Auckland. We spoke to to people who are like trained in the art of superconductivity. Everyone says, yeah, like from physics standpoint, it should work. You come up with engineering design and you pitch it, and engineers are like, yeah, that should work. Like there's no baggage. It's like, yeah, it,
Interesting.
it seems to work. That is
So
very
so
good.
do you think
Yeah.
do you think that mental baggage, I mean can you compare maybe how like, New Zealand obviously has become a leader in space technology. And it's
Yes.
actually, I think it's per capita, per GDP, whatever. Like it's one of the top, I don't know, like one top five countries, which you wouldn't expect for a country whose
Yes.
main export is like, timber. So,
Yeah.
um, what has it been like kind of building this company in New Zealand? And do you feel like that mindset is an advantage?
Yeah. We have our positives and our negatives in New Zealand. But there's a lot of strengths that we have here in New Zealand here. And as I said, we think from first principles, and we have the attitude that, here's a problem, we need to solve it, and we only have the resource that we have. Because that's how the settlers, had to deal with problems. Like we only have so much resource, and it either works and we're winning, or it doesn't work and we're like screwed. So when you come in and like outline a problem, to and people buy into the problem and understand that, okay, that's a problem, and then you say, okay, so we need to solve it, and here's the solution. It seems like it should work. Let's give it a crack. People are open to it. And also, I guess the success of Rocket Lab, I think that made it like, Peter Beck, raised a lot of money from great VCs, delivered on the technology, is building a great company. And the fact that he's done it before in New Zealand is also helped us, because I think we were like either second or third company to register in New Zealand as a space company. I think Dawn
Wow.
Aerospace maybe like a week, 2 weeks older than us. I think Dawn Aerospace registered in 2017, maybe November, October, and Zenno is 2017, like December.
Yeah.
Wow.
So literally before us
Um,
was only Rocket Lab
This
in
is more
VC.
what it's like to build a company or product for space. Like people don't fully understand. Like imagine you yourself when you were 5 years old in Altai looking at that monument, and then you came down and you were to try to explain to your 5-year-old self what you do. How would you explain?
Yeah.
Like, what is that like? What is it like working with big companies? What is it like developing this high-tech technology that takes years to develop, takes months to deploy, takes maybe weeks to understand the results. Like the timelines are so long, the people you're working with, NASA, other folks are such large global organizations. Yeah, what is that like on a day-to-day basis?
Fundamentally, it's very, very hard for everyone involved. Like it's very hard to do stuff in the space industry, because the industry moves very slow, so and therefore it's expensive, and therefore failure is not an option, because failure is so expensive. So people have to work their asses off. People have to think very hard. People have to look far ahead, and they have to really trust each other and be very cooperative. And so the industry is very small. We sort of all know each other, worldwide. But the crazy thing is, like, when you look at other businesses, you get to test your product almost on the daily sometimes. In this business, we get to test our product once every 7 years. It's like you have to like the only other thing you can do is to like be really embedded into the companies and into the customers' sort of development, cycles and their engineers to make sure you're building the right thing, because you can't afford to build the wrong thing here. You know what I mean? In this industry, you have to build the right thing. Yeah. So It's very hard. It's very resource intensive, and you have to be very smart about what you do, and you have to work very, very fast. But all of these things, they sound like hard things. Well, they are hard, but they're actually very beautiful because you end up shedding all the bullshit, and you end up working with truth only, and you end up working with people who are very motivated, highly energetic, and can take a lot of beating and deliver, on time and on budget. And that is my favorite thing about this industry. You work with great performers who are very driven, and you deliver products that will last for decades and centuries.
Do,
I don't know
do
if I
you
answered your question, Mark, or not.
yeah, yeah. I mean, what were you doing for those 7 years, like until you got your first product in space? 7 years is a long time.
Very long time. Actually, no, well, compared to like even if we look at like Rocket Lab, I think they took like 12 years to fly their first rocket, commercial rocket.
Huh.
Yeah, so in
Okay.
our industry, it's yeah, I guess more acceptable to take forever. But of course, we've spent 7 years mostly on R&D. But of course, Mark, as you understand, like if you run it as a private company, you have to ensure the funding is available, that you are de-risking the venture, that you're demonstrating, hitting the milestones, inflicting value in the company, progressing the relationships. But fundamentally, yeah, they're demonstrating, a good product market fit and de-risking the tech and the team. Yeah. So that's what we spent 7 years doing.
So can you tell us how you like kind of de-risked and built the product? So like you first kind of like said, okay, like the engineering side, the physics side, those are like in theory solve problems. Then how do you go from that to like an actual product or an actual thing that works?
You got to run your ideas by people who are at the frontier of the industry, and there's only a handful of them, but they're all busy people doing, working on space stuff. So you can't really have access to them if you're a nobody, so to speak. So you have to develop a bit of credibility, show early results with a promising technology. On the back of that, develop your network, develop connections, introduction to these people, and then ask them the questions. Hey guys, am I building the right thing? Is that the thing that, how can I solve your problems? Is that the problem that you're suffering from? What can I do for you here? You have to, at the same time, you have to educate them on how it works. You're like, hey guys, this is the thing you've never heard about. Here's how it works. I believe that solves that problem. Can you do a sanity check for me? And essentially, you have to get on the plane. People love to do it in person, and you have to bring your hardware with you. You have to like fly with a box with the engine. Say, hey, here's the thing that we have in space. Here's how it works. Here's the wire. Here's the cooling system. Here's the control system. That everything is built in house. Yeah, so I have to fly quite
Did
a
you get
bit.
did you get pushback? Did
Like,
people say this doesn't work or this not gonna work or like yeah,
uh,
like what was the reception?
so the first thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to take care of complete solve agility fully for the satellites. We actually wanted to solve the problem of propulsion and attitude control at the same time, meaning that you can go up and down, left and right, as well as around itself. That's what we wanted to do originally. Then we realized that actually, like it is possible to do from a technology standpoint, but from the business standpoint, the market has good solutions currently on the market for going up and down, left and right kind of thing. The market doesn't really have a good solution for pointing, for attitude control.
There were solutions that were
So
allowed you to go up and down,
yeah,
but not.
so I'm trying to speak the layman's terms. So it's essentially propulsion. You can do propulsion with this technology. Like you can actually like change your orbital parameters.
Mhm.
But there are solutions in the market that get it that take care of this already. And even though we can do it without fuel, uh, you know, it's not really alleviating any bottlenecks for the industry just yet. And our objective is to build a business, real business today that's solving problems today. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
we have zeroed in on solving the problem of satellite pointing. So when you're in space, your satellite tumbles, it turns around, because it's like throwing a stone when you throw a rock, it goes like this. Yeah, and you can't afford for a satellite to tumble. It's very bad because then you can't charge your solar panels. You want them to point towards the sun. You can't communicate with the station on the ground. You can't take sharp images. You don't want that to be a problem essentially. That's the very first thing you do when you get to space is you detumble your satellite and you could keep it pointing the right way for the duration of the whole mission. Every spacecraft has to do it. 100% of spacecraft, 100% of the missions. And the technologies that we deploy currently are suboptimal. There isn't a single piece of tech that solves the problem fully. You normally have to combine at least two technologies together to complement each other to jointly address that problem. And they have shortcomings, like they They generate a lot of vibration. They, existing technologies which sort of ruins how well you can point. If you have to do with vibration, you don't want the camera to vibrate too much. And these vibrating, the vibrating technology also needs to be recharged every now and then because it reaches the peak. It reaches the peak how much it can, sort of take, and then you have to sort of desaturate, as the term in the industry, with another tech or with fuel, and so it is suboptimal, and they have a high failure rate. So yeah, we're building a replacement, just a one single box that takes care of everything on the satellite, that can point the satellite, it can stabilize it, and then we're extending the functionality of that box to enable, radiation protection in the future and close proximity operations like formation flight for satellites.
That's cool.
Yeah. I don't want to be too much of a nerd.
Max, I know you have to go, but maybe we can wrap up by quickly talking about what is kind of in the cards for the next year and the next 2 years, the next 5 years. What are the plans?
Yeah, Hendrik, that's a good question. Thank you. So we're very excited to have the world's first superconducting product deployed this year. We're very excited to ship hardware to customers, building a real business, and developing this business over the years. Providing a great return to our early investors, and also expanding the range of products that we have within Zenno. So currently, we're concentrated only on one. We're laser focused on satellite agility, being able to point a satellite, in a particular way. But we're very keen to dive deeper into more disruptive and harder to crack applications like radiation protection and in space operation. And to pull this off, we need good partners, and we've been developing relationships with them over the last couple of years. So I'm eager to partner with great companies, with big names, and deliver great value to the industry.
Maybe I can ask a final question, like maybe with a short answer. Like, would you like to go to space yourself at some point?
As a visitor, for sure, Hendrik. I don't have an ambition to leave Earth and to live on Mars or to live in orbit or on the moon. I think humans in general, I mean, we are literally made of the soil of this planet. Our building blocks, our constituent blocks, are made of the soil of this planet, and we are evolved, to prosper and to thrive in the environment of Earth. We feel really good here. Not all of us, not all, but we have capacity to feel good here. Nowhere else can you do it. You know what I mean? I'm all for expansion into space. In fact, I am very keen on expanding consciousness into space. But my vision for it is expanding consciousness that is more sort of AI aligned, the AI consciousness. And ideally, I would like it to be self-replicating and self-sustaining in space, so that that consciousness can be independent on the consciousness that we have here on Earth as humans. Yeah.
Why? Why do you want consciousness to be in space?
Well, so I share the sentiment of Elon that, like we only have all eggs in one basket as far as consciousness is concerned. But I don't share the sentiment of his solution. His solution is, expand humans to Mars. I think we can expand artificial consciousness into deep space, and into other environments. And we can equip that consciousness with the ability to replicate itself without dependency on humans or on Earth resources whatsoever, and sustain itself in space indefinitely.
I feel like that's a whole another discussion that we should definitely follow up on at some point. But Max, this has been great. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm sorry we kept you so long. We'll definitely continue that conversation hopefully sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Mark.
Max.
Hendrik. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to TechMates. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends. We'll be back soon with more stories of Kiwi and Aussie founders reshaping the future and disrupting down under. Until next time, keep dreaming big and daring to disrupt.